Hey, also, so far we have talked about proportions in triangles. We've talked about what it means to be similar triangles. And so now we're going to talk about some shortcuts in showing triangles are similar in the event that you don't have all the information about the triangles. This is very close to showing congruent triangles congruent using shortcuts. And you'll see here that a couple of these shortcuts kind of have the same name. And we add at the end of them these little squigglies that mean similar, so we can differentiate between the two. And so let's talk about what exactly these are. When we had congruent triangles, the A meant a pair of congruent angles. In this case, that's still true. We talked in the last lesson that in similar triangles, the angles are congruent. The thing that's different here is what the S's mean. The S's in congruent triangle shortcuts meant that those sides were the same length. They were congruent. They were exactly the same. When we talk about similar triangles, we're talking about proportions for sides. So we're going to match up the pairs of sides that go together. And we're going to see if they make the same fraction. So if they make the same fraction, that means they're in proportion. That means we have these S's. So let's put that in practice. Whenever I'm deciding if triangles are similar, I have four options. I can have the side angle side similarity. I can have side 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 similarity. I can have angle angle similarity. That's a new one. That doesn't show triangles are congruent, but it will show triangles similar. Or we can have not enough information. That's always a possibility. And so if I look over here at this first pair of triangles, I can see I have vertical angles. So that gives me an A. But I don't have any more angle pairs, so I'm definitely not going to have angle-angle similarity. I have four sides, so I have two sides in each triangle where I know how long they are, but I don't know how long these other sides are, so I won't be able to have side, side, side. In order to have side, angle, side, my angles have to be between the sides I'm looking at, and that is true. These two sides make that angle, that's a vertical angle, and these two sides make this angle, that's a vertical angle. So now what I need to do is check to see if the corresponding sides make the same fractions. And so I usually like to do the smaller numbers over the bigger numbers. It's just the way I like to look at them. It doesn't mean you have to. But that's the way I'm going to do them, and I'm going to try and stay consistent, and I invite you to just do the same thing every time so that you are repeating a process. And so I'm going to take 48 and put it on top of one fraction, and 54, put it on top of the other. We're wondering if these two fractions are going to be equal. And so 48, we don't really know which one it should match up with, but if this is going to work, 48 should match up with the smaller of the two in the other triangle, and 54 being the bigger of these two should match up with the bigger. And so we're asking ourselves, do 48 divided by 88, 54 divided by 99, do they make the same decimal? And they do. They both make 5 or 0.54 repeating. So you could check that in your calculator. You could see that both of these decimals end up the same. That means these pairs of sides are in proportion. So we have two pairs of sides that make equal fractions with a congruent angle in between them. That is the side angle side similarity. And so we can name these triangles much like we did with congruent triangles. We want to name them in the same order. So C is my first letter here. These are the congruent angles, so I'm going to start with C in my other one. Then I do C and I go to D. I'm going across the smaller of the two sides, so I want to go across the smaller of the two sides to get to my next letter R, and then I will end with Q. And so now we know some things about these triangles. Now that we know they're similar, we know that D and R are congruent, and we know that E and Q are congruent. And we know that whatever we have for RQ and DE, they should make the same fraction as these two fractions, so they should reduce to be a decimal of 0.54 repeating. If every time I ask you, hey, are these two triangles similar? And if they are, can you tell me what shortcut? If you write down all the options, you're going to start remembering all the options, and you're going to give yourself a platform to work from. And so when I look at these two pairs of triangles, I don't see any angles marked up. I don't see any congruent symbols on any of the angles. These triangles don't have any overlap. There's no vertical angles. There's no reflexive property. And so I don't know anything about the angles. So I can't say anything about side angle side or angle angle. Those aren't going to be ways I can show these two triangles similar. What I do know is how long all the sides are. And so I can check to see, hey, if I match up all the sides and I make fractions, will these fractions all be equal? And so I'm going to write 3 fractions. And on the top of my fractions, I'm going to put all of the sides from this triangle. I like to start with the smaller triangle first. I want to know if these 3 fractions are going to be equal. I don't know that yet, so I put a little question mark there to remind myself, hey, these might not all be equal. And so then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to find my smallest side, 24, and I'm going to match it up with my smallest side here. Then my medium side with my medium side, my big side with my big side. I've done math a lot in my life, so I can see that these all are going to simplify to be the same fraction. If you don't see that, that's absolutely okay. Just divide them. 8 divided by 24, 11 divided by 33, and 12 divided by 36. They all give you the same decimal, 0.3 repeating, which is 1/3. And so that means that all the corresponding sides create fractions that are equal. All these sides are in proportion. That means we have similar triangles using a side, side, side shortcut. And the reason we did this lesson last is hopefully you're getting used to writing these equal fractions, pairing these side pairs up to see if the fractions are equal. Again, I always invite you and encourage you and want to coach you to write the options. I'm asking you, hey, are these two triangles similar? These are my options. If I'm looking at my 2 triangles, I'm not seeing that any of the sides are labeled with any information about how long they are. And so these 2 options are kind of unavailable for us now. And so I either can say they're congruent by angle angle, or I can say that there's not enough information. And I just said the word congruent. I meant similar. It's very easy to confuse these things. What I do need to know is, do I have 2 pairs of congruent angles? 2 pairs of congruent angles will give me angle-angle similarity. I'm looking here and I have 2 marks in that angle and 2 marks in that angle. That gives me 1 pair. 3 marks in that angle, 3 marks in that angle. That means they match. That means they're congruent. That gives me 2 pairs of congruent angles, which is exactly what angle-angle similarity is. So we know that these 2 triangles are similar by angle-angle. And I realize now I didn't go ahead and finish this similarity statement on my last one, so I'll make sure I do it on this one. We have TUV, TUV, 1, 2, 3. My first letter had two marks, my second letter had 3 marks, and then my third letter was the one that had no marks, and so I'm going to label my other triangle, triangle LMN. Sometimes this stuff can get a little tricky and it's a little difficult to process, so as always, I really encourage you to ask one of us for help when you need it. It might be a good idea to take a pause and let some of the stuff sink in. Whatever it takes to help you best learn this. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to keep my same process of writing down all the options, even though I can see them over there to the left of my screen. The more I write these, the more I remember what the options are. And I can see in this problem, I don't know anything about the angles again, so angle, angle, and side, side cannot exist. I don't want to just say it's side, side, because what happens if the fractions aren't equal to each other? They're not in proportion. Let's check. I always like to start with my smaller triangle, so I'm going to start with the one on the bottom. I'm going to see if all three of these fractions are equal. So I'm going to go pick my smallest number to match up with 24, my medium number to match up with 30, and my biggest number to match up with 98. And we don't need to really simplify these fractions. We can just do the division. 24 divided by 55, 30 divided by 70, and 42 divided by 98. And you can see that two of the fractions simplify to be equal to each other, but this fraction, even though it's close, it is not the same. And so we do not have three equal fractions. We do not have three pairs of sides that are proportional. So even though visually these two triangles look like they're similar, they are not. We do not have the information to say they are. So I'd like you to try these two. Try these two. We're going to worry about just deciding if they're similar, and if they are similar, decide which shortcut shows they're similar. We don't have to worry about this part necessarily, but you should learn how to do it because it is important. Take your time on these two. If you have questions, ask. So hopefully you got that there was not enough information here. It looks like it could be side angle side similarity, but it's not because the two fractions are not equal. 12 over 24 is not equal to 16 over 18. Over here, I do have three pairs of sides that correspond and make equal fractions. They all simplify to be 0.2 if you did the small over the big, but it would work either way. And so we have side, side, side similarity for number 2. So before you go on to the practice, do ask for help if any of these were troubling to you. We'd be glad to help you. If you're ready, go ahead and do these 8 practice problems. Take your time on them, and good luck.